Hi, this is my first YouTube video and I wanted to do a little review of the books that I read in February and my currently reading and my March TBR. I have my computer here open on Goodreads. The first book that I read in February was My Book of Life by Angel, and this book is written as a novel in verse, so it's like every page is a poem. I gave this book a 4 stars because I really loved the story of it, and it's just so good. It's about this girl who she was working on the streets and she met this guy named Cal, and he allowed her to come move in with him, and she like felt loved for the first time and it was really sweet. But then he started getting abusive and he brought this 11-year-old girl home. The girl's name was Melly, and Angel felt so bad for the girl because Cal had like raped her and a bunch of stuff like that, and she didn't want Melly to get hooked on drugs like she was because Cal had given her so many drugs and she was trying to give them up, and she just kept like vomiting and she got really sick from it. So she had to figure out a way to escape with Melly and get out of the house and leave, but he was like super abusive, and if he found out that someone helped them escape, he would kill them. So that's what that book's about. However, this would have been a 5-star, but this was like a 4, maybe even a 3.5, because the end was just so hard to understand and it was so confusing. And I think that if it wasn't written in verse, it would have been easier. I ended up like finishing the book super confused, and I was reading it at the same time as a friend of mine was, and I had to like ask her, I was like, what just happened? Like, I just didn't understand. I would recommend it to someone who is looking to read a novel in verse, and just wants to explore that genre, that world. Hey y'all, Editor Kate here. I forgot to mention in this video that I don't have this book currently, like the physical copy, because my mom's borrowing it. So just bear with me while I try to explain it without having the physical copy. The next book I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Clearly a very hyped up book on Book Talk. Right after reading, I gave this book a 5-star. I was like, that is such a good book and I loved it so much. But like after a month to think on it, I ended up bringing that review down to a 3.5 star, and I'm gonna explain why. It's good. However, once you get to a certain point, the book gets really predictable, which I don't mind. Like, I read Better Than the Movies, and we'll get into that next, but that was predictable and I loved that. However, this book was like predictable in a sense where it was like, I know exactly what's gonna happen right now, and yeah. And then Colleen Hoover does her classic coho where she throws in a little detail that happens and it comes across as a shock, but it just made the book not so good. Like that little plot twist made the book worse than it could have been. And she has, so this isn't really a spoiler, I hope, but Lily has some trauma from like her dad, and I just don't think that it was discussed that well. And then stuff happens to Lily and like she just brushed it off. It was like she brushed it off, but she also made a solution. I don't know how to explain it, but like you would think that she would have some trauma from that, and she was kind of just like, whatever, let me go call up a friend. The ending of the book was like predictable, boring, and it kind of like the end before you read the word that I cannot remember right now was like so boring, so bland, and then you read that and it gets good, but it wasn't that good. And then after the end, it feels unfinished, which was like why I felt like I needed to read It Starts With Us. Now we've got to get to this book. I gave this book a 2-star, and I loved It Ends With Us, and I needed closure, which is why I picked this up. This whole book is boring, and it really doesn't feel like it has a plot. The whole book is, I'm just gonna say a spoiler. If you don't want a spoiler, skip to what I put on the screen. But the whole book is Lily trying to get with Atlas, but she's afraid that Ryle will hurt her or like find her or do something with their kid, something like that. That's the whole book. She's just scared of Ryle. And nothing ever happens with Ryle. Like, Ryle doesn't care. Nothing ever happens with Ryle. So, like, why are we making this whole book about her being afraid of Ryle? It literally has no plot. It's just like this. Like a flat line. There's none of that climax, drop, whatever. It's bland. It's predictable. She ends up getting with Atlas, which is like great, cute, but it honestly ruined It Ends With Us for me. And I really wish that we could have had some more drama or something. Nothing ever happens. Like, that's great for a light little romance, but It Ends With Us is not a light romance, so why is this a light romance? No thank you. However, if you want a light romance story, like I'm sure you do, then read this. But the co-parenting, the being afraid of Ryle, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't as good as it could have been, I feel like. So next book. If you couldn't tell, the beginning of this month I was really getting into Coho, but this is my favorite Colleen Hoover book. It was my favorite book I read all month. It's so just, I love this book so much. This is a 5-star read. After It Ends With Us, I was like, should I give her another chance with Ugly Love? And I'm so glad I did. I love this book and I would reread it again and again. This girl named Tate comes to her apartment one day and there's a guy blacked out at her door and he's like, Rachel, saying this girl's name, Rachel, the whole time. And later she finds out, like, she moved into her brother's apartment and that was the next door neighbor who was blacked out. I'm not going to be very good at explaining this, but bear with me, please. And her brother was like, no, that's my friend, like, you can let him in. The next morning, this guy, his name is Miles comes into her room and they're just like talking, I guess kind of like getting mad at each other, I don't really know. And she ends up finding out that he hasn't been in love for, I think it's 6 years. The last girl he loved was Rachel. Now you get this double storyline of Miles and Rachel and Miles and Tate currently, and then 6 years ago. And it's so good. Like, you end up finding out why he hasn't loved in 6 years, what happened to him. And the end of this book is so good. Story of Miles and Tate. Now, Miles and Tate, Miles is like, I can't fall in love right now. And Tate is like, I don't have time for love right now. So they come up with, okay, well, we're both attracted to each other. Let's just have, you read and you fall in love with the characters. And I want to reread this book so bad. It's just so, it has my heart. Okay, next book. This was a 5-star read for me in the moment, but I think that it's a 4.5 now. So this girl is living next to this guy. She's lived next to this guy like all her life. The guy's name is Wes and they grew up bullying each other, whatever. Now she's in high school and her old neighbor, who she used to have the fattest crush on, moves back into town. Her name's Michael. Michael and Wes are friends, so she goes over to Wes's house and she's like, I need your help getting me Michael. And so they come up with this agreement. If she gives Wes the like golden parking spot to their houses, then he will help her get Michael as the prom date. and they end up just becoming friends through all of this. The ending of this book is very predictable. There are some minor like plot twists. I really loved the writing of this book. You fall in love with the characters. However, it was kind of hard for me to get through because it's a lot of writing and there are quite a few moments where she's just boring. She lost her mother at a young age, and so when something bad happens to her, she goes up to her mother's grave and talks to her mom. And those parts got a little bit repetitive. I do love how the author didn't brush over that trauma like Colleen Hoover, and it ends with that. So I definitely recommend you to read this. This is my current read for March. I've been reading it since March 1st, and it's definitely a slow read. It's hard to get through, so I'm kind of afraid that I'm not going to be able to read as many books as I want to. Natalia is not the kind of girl who takes risks. 6 years ago, she barely survived a house fire that killed her baby brother. So we find out in the first 4 pages that she went to a mental hospital because of what this house fire did to her, and she has a lot of trauma from it. Now she's cautious and she always plays it safe, which means that she never has been on a hike in her life, but her coworker Wyatt pulls her out there and he's like, let's go on a hike together, please. They're on a hike and a wildfire breaks out. Now in the beginning of this book, we get 2 men setting a car on fire to get rid of evidence of a body. And then the next chapter, it's Natalia and Wyatt in the woods. They're on a hike and they're turning around, and all of a sudden a wildfire comes and they can't get out. They're like stuck. And then there's another family there that has a baby, or not a baby, like a little kid, and they're stuck together too. So Natalia gets like, remembers her brother and this little kid, and they have no cell service, few supplies, and no way out of the burning forest. This group of strangers must be allies if they're going to survive. However, they keep hearing these gunshots in the woods, and they find out that all of a sudden the killer is among them. That's the plotline of the story. This book is written in 3rd person, which I don't enjoy books that are written in 3rd person. I'm a 1st person kind of gal. I needed something that wasn't super romancy after all my romance binge in February. So we're reading this right now. I want to read the Shatter Me series so bad, but I think that I'm getting that for my birthday, which is early April. The next book that I'm going to read after Playing with Fire is going to be Verity, because I have it here and I want to read. I don't even know what this book is about, but it sounded interesting, so that's the book that I'm going to read next. And then I'm gonna read The Good Sister, which I have up here. And then I really want to read If He Had Been With Me, but I don't have that. So after The Good Sister, I'm reading The Do-Over. And honestly, I think that might be all I'll be able to fit in this month. But we're going to finish this, read Verity, and then The Good Sister, and then The Do-Over. And I wasn't even going to read this one, but it got really good reviews on Goodreads. I'm not connecting with it so far, but whatever. So yeah, let's go read. And as I'm reading this one, I will talk to y'all about it.